Dude, I've been looking forward to this. I wouldn't miss this at all.
Oh, well, thank you. I was jogging this morning. I have a bit of a routine. Usually I drive my son to school at 7 a.m. and I drop him off and I go to the gym, but he's not going to school in the summertime, obviously. So we have an electric car and I went to put energy in it. I guess if that's the right, I don't know how you say it.
I like putting energy in it. That's a good phrase.
Well, I put energy into doing it. But anyways, I went running while the car was charging and I listened to your Boys Noise interview after you said you interviewed Alex. So,
oh yeah.
The reason why I'm going to this point was because you said in that interview how much you look forward to talking to him. And I was like, I hope Willy's going to say that to me too.
Oh, and man. Yes, well, then I nailed it out the gates. That's great. Man, I mean, Boys Noise, just for a quick tangent on Boys Noise, I've been thinking about him a lot lately because, he's on tour with Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
And I'm such a huge Nine Inch Nails fan. And I know, obviously, you've worked with Trent Reznor in the past, which is something I really wanted to ask you about. But just in terms of Boys Noise, real quick, like, how crazy is that he's touring with them now on this, giant arena level? It's such an interesting connection for two groups like him and Nine Inch Nails, who I've been both aware of and fans of for so long. It's just sort of one of those weird worlds colliding things where I didn't ever imagine they'd be on the same stage, Yeah,
I think it's dope. I'm happy for Alex and Nine Inch Nails and Trent. I think that's a good combination. Not to make it about me, but
no, please.
It works. The reason why I'm transitioning into this is because I think that it works. The two. I haven't seen. I mean, I've seen a couple social media posts that Alex did, and it looks dope. And I didn't even know that he was on tour with him. So it was really cool, and I was like, "Good for him, dude. That's awesome. That's a great fit." I was asked to be the U.S. tour DJ for U2's Pop Mart tour in the United States. And I turned it down. I look back on my life and think of something that we all do as we age and progress called regrets. And if we have any regrets. And I think that would have been a regret now. Looking back at it, but my ego went into it. Like,
right.
I just thought of U2 was getting into the electronic sound and, this whole Pop Mart, and they had Howie B that was doing the executive producer or the production on it, co-producing the album with them, along with Flood. And it was kind of an organic process how it happened. It was kind of cool how it came about. But I just thought that they're going to be like pure rock and roll U2 fans that don't want to hear electronic shit.
Right.
And they're just going to throw beer at me. And, it's going to be this kind of country bar scene in a movie, where the band's playing behind the fence. And
you might not have been wrong about that, by the way.
Well, it's funny. I bumped into Howie B like 2 years later or something on the road. And I said, because he ended up doing it because I didn't do it. And it made sense for him to do it because he was the co-producer on the album. And he said it was challenging, but fun.
Yeah.
I also remember the iconic photograph, which was one of the first in line of making every DJ put their hands up in the air with the crowd shot behind him. Paul Oakenfold shot of him doing the hands up.
I was going to say, didn't Oakenfold tour with U2 as well at some point?
What was that?
Didn't Oakenfold tour with U2 as well?
That's what I'm saying tour? Before. Yeah. No, this was way before.
Oh, okay. Got you.
And it was like the quintessential moment for like the superstar DJ point. Like for me, that's when it was like, oh, things have changed, you know? But anyways, I didn't, my ego got involved. I didn't think that I was going to enjoy it. And I think I needed to suppress that doom and gloom thought and should have just gone with it. I have toured with a band before, but it was more my style. I was on the opening. Actually, I was just watching footage. The reason why I missed the interview yesterday was because I wrote the date wrong on my calendar. But I was in my studio doing a studio move, and I found an old digital tape recorder, video recorder, excuse me, that I used to tour with. And I found, and I was watching it this morning, tour footage of me on that tour. I had no idea what was on these cassettes. I forgot what year it was, but I was touring the US. We did 28 shows in 32 days with Meat Beat Manifesto, Consolidated, and myself opening up.
Oh, wow.
And that was cool because we all kind of share the same ethos. And I mean, I met you two on an airplane. We all were sitting up front flying from Dublin to New York. And it was a really surreal experience how I saw everybody. And then they heard that I was on the plane. And it was really surreal. But this with Meat Beat Manifesto, who Jack Dangers is one of my ultimate top producers. If you're familiar with Jack.
Yeah. No, I am. Yeah, I was just trying to think how to frame this for younger listeners who might not know them. But I mean, Meat Beat Manifesto is like seminal 90s industrial rock, like
breakbeat. I mean, it's kind of like who Liam Hewitt looked up to from The Prodigy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, like serious pioneers of that sound.
Insane. And then Consolidated, it was this whole like Wax Trax Records tour. And they were all vegan like I was. And they were politically oriented. And, you know, I dug hanging out and spending time with these guys. It was a fun memory. But that's, I guess, a regret moment. I don't know.
This is another tangent real quick, but was veganism more rare, like really rare in like the music scene in the 90s? Because now I think it's pretty common. You meet vegans everywhere you go. I'm vegan leaning. I'm vegetarian. I should be vegan if I was, hewing more to my morals. But it's common now. And I guess I'm curious. Like, was it weird that you were vegan back then, like as a touring artist?
I'm just concerned about myself and my health and stuff like that. So I do it for me, not what I think that other people are going to think.
Oh, of course. I guess I'm just curious, like, were you an outlier in that?
It wasn't as common, but there are, birds of a feather flock together. And there's a group of people who were into mindfulness, I guess you want to say. I started out at a young age through my brother and my mother starting being vegetarian in the early 80s. And I just followed suit. And I became vegan in 94. So to answer your question, it wasn't as popular as it is now, or the numbers weren't as great as they were then as they are now. But also I was an outlier, if you want to call it, with me just being in the music industry and being kind of straight edge.
Yeah.
In a sense. I liked alcohol, but I didn't get drunk. I never did drugs. I just, smoked weed occasionally. Not weed, but marijuana. I don't want to put down the glorious marijuana. So anyway,
it was different marijuana back then, right?
It's true. That's true. Now it's engineered and AI based, and it's strong stuff nowadays. I use it medicinally anyways to help me sleep. So
I gotcha.
But anyways, I was the guy too that was in the nightclub scene, late night, drug induced. I always took that as a like a hard hit on the shoulder or on the chin when people, sometimes I'd get interviews in magazines and periodicals or wherever. And people would say, well, I don't understand. How does it work? Like, you don't do drugs, but you make drug music.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I said, could you rephrase what you're saying? Because that's really rude. Does that mean that if I go to or like the Rolling Stones, that I'm going to do coke and heroin?
Right.
And I don't know. I just kind of did my own thing, and I was in. If it wouldn't have been the electronic nightclub lifestyle, it could have been the same for a different lifestyle that I would have chosen as well too. But there I could count how many vegans there were on my hand in the beginning. And
yeah. It's probably more punk back then. And I relate to what you're saying about the drug thing too. I was the same way. I mean, I didn't have a drop of alcohol till I was like in my early 20s. I still have barely done any drugs in my life. And yeah, even back then as a teenager, like, I was staying up all night, going to raves, all that. And then later on, once I started producing, it was the same thing where it was almost weird. I had to like go back and figure out like, oh, like other people were doing drugs to this? Like, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I just thought this was cool.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, in America, for people that listen to this outside of the US, or the youngins in America still understand that you can't be under 21 to get into a bar that serves alcohol. You have to be 21 years of age. So the only way for me to hear this music when, I was younger, the house, the techno, was to be in the clubs because it wasn't being played on the radio here, and there was an internet radio back in the 80s.
Right.
So I had to be a barback at a nightclub to be able to work there so I can get in and hear the music. And I remember one of the first times me going into the nightclub, and I was going to the bathroom, and there's a bunch of people just passed out in their own sick, and they were just throwing up. And I'm like, this is what it's about. This is what it's going to be when I grow up about. And I was like, this isn't how, to me, it was just the complete opposite.
Right.
Now, I understand. I'm not one to kind of preach my views. It's just my view, and that's it. If you ask me about it, I can tell you. But for me, this is how it worked. And I wanted to listen to the music and have it make me feel like perhaps I'm on drugs, but without like the music being the drug.
Yeah, 100%. Was this back in Philly where you were barbacking?
Yes, that's correct.
What was the club?
My first club that I worked at was in 1988, and it was called Memphis. And I was a barback there, and I was, barbacks do, they go around collecting glasses, and they bring the cases of beers up to the bars, and, doing all that kind of work. And I just really wanted to hear the music. And it turned out that, the guy who owned this club owned like one of the 2 after hours nightclubs in Philly. And then I can get in there because they knew I worked at the other club, and they knew I didn't drink anyway. So it was an in for me just to be able to get my foot into this DJ lifestyle culture, besides the DJ culture that I had on the streets, which was growing up in Philly in the 80s with hip hop culture. And, going to some block parties in West Philadelphia where, the true originators of turntablism started, with Cash Money and Jazzy Jeff and DJ Miz. And to me, that was a pivotal moment. But that was not house, that wasn't techno, that wasn't disco, that was hip hop.
Of course. Yeah. But it's interesting when we look back and see that, some of these things were happening in parallel at the same time too. Like, I love hearing about sort of the origins of it and how things were different back then. Like, if you would go to a block party and see Cash Money and Jazzy Jeff playing at that point, were they stars at that point? Like local stars? Did people, treat them like they were a big deal, or what was it sort of more informal feeling back then?
Yeah, I mean, it was very territorial. They had their posses, they had their groups, they had their crews, so everybody was on their side. I mean, everybody in their neighborhood knew who they were, obviously. And then, hip hop became a commercial phenomenon in the early to mid 80s. And, New York had the burgeonous origin of hip hop. But to me, and the DJs as well, from New York. But to me, and I'm from Philly, so I'm very loyal, it was about the turntable technicians who were meticulous and creative. And that was Cash and Jeff.
That was kind of the Philly brand, was like, this is what we do the best.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, I mean, we're always the underdogs here in Philly. We're in the shadow of New York with sports, with size, with, New York's New York, and then Philly's an hour and a half away south. But we share a lot of similarities and a lot of non-similar things. But Philly was always the underdog, the Rocky. I mean, that's why it was here. We're the underdogs.
Right.
And it also translated musically as well. We had a lot of people overlook the importance of Philadelphia. And, if it wasn't for disco, a lot of electronic dance music wouldn't be what it is, I feel passionately
100%.
about. And that, was based in Philadelphia, at least the musicians and the house, like, Philly International Records, Gamble and Huff. It would be made in Philadelphia and played around the world. And actually I believe it's the first ever TV dance program was in Philadelphia. It was Dick Clark's American Bandstand, which happened in Philadelphia.
Oh man. Yeah. I somehow didn't connect that was, I think I knew that at one point, but yeah, that's crazy. That was in Philly, huh?
Yep. Wow. And then it broke off and you had your Soul Train and, but it started in Philadelphia. So, I mean, Philadelphia had it going on, but we never got the props that we kind of deserve. And there's a Rocky Balboa kind of person on each resident of Philadelphia. There's the devil Rocky Balboa, and then there's the angel Rocky Balboa, and they whisper something in your ear about, staying true or hating Philly or loving it or hating some other city. So, we're the underdog. So we get left around with music a lot. Chicago and New York had house. Detroit had techno. Philly had disco, but there went that whole Philly disco sucks movement that was really appreciated and stage front in Chicago in the 70s with the massacre of the disco records on the baseball field.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's all super interesting. I'm jumping around here a lot, but did you feel any of that chip on your shoulder thing when you were coming up? Like, did you feel like in any way, maybe you weren't being noticed or your music wasn't being taken as seriously because of where you were coming from?
Good question. No, I never felt like I didn't deserve I'm also a firm believer in the cream rises to the top. So if you put your hard work in, you'll get your hard payday kind of thing. So I wasn't the salty, I could have moved. I think that maybe I could have been, I guess, bigger, more popular if I was from New York. Sure. I don't know. I mean, Armand Van Helden's he's a good friend of mine from the past, like years ago when he was living in Boston. And then everything changed for him when he moved to New York on another level. Not that people were like, oh, Armand Van Helden's from New York, but he kind of fell under the whole New York auspice
Yeah.
and umbrella of the house sound, and he helped create that deviation of house, from classic house to this new school New York house sound. But I think that if people were from New York, or they're from Chicago, or they're from Detroit, it helps them worldwide. I've never really had that coming out of Philly. And maybe things that would have been different if I moved to New York or London or something like that. But I stayed here.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. You got me thinking now about other musicians or scenes I associate with Philly. For me, there was in like the mid to late 2000s when Blog House was kind of a thing, and there was this intersection of dance and indie rock and all that. There, the scene in Philly, I think, was like a leader for the country with Spank Rock and Amanda Blank and Hollertronics and, a whole bunch of other people from that era. That's the first time I can remember for like me as a young adult really being aware of Philly as like this cultural musical force, in terms of like the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I mean, and then Diplo came to live here as well, and he started his whole crew. And I mean, I think he's from Florida, but he's more known for being from Baltimore, even though he lived in Philly and now lives in LA. But
I'm not sure. Did he ever live in Baltimore? I'm not even sure.
I thought he did.
Maybe.
Well, at least he's affiliated with a lot of Baltimore people.
He was definitely affiliated. But yeah, I think of him as like a Philly guy who was born in Florida. But, at this point, I don't know if he lives anywhere. he's all over the place.
He's a nomadic man living in between the desert of Burning Man and then LA.
Yeah, exactly. And the runways of Paris. Yeah.
Good for him, dude.
No, awesome. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah.
Diplo and I, we've met several times, but we are always traveling and kind of ships in the night scenario. But I like the fact, like I think the longest running electronic radio show on Sirius. It was on before called Electric Area.
Right.
And now my show, which I want to give props to Diplo because he has his own station called Diplo's Revolution.
Right.
And when he started that, every year he's like, got to have Josh on, got to keep the show. So it's nice because I'm kind of the odd one out there in a sense.
Right.
But I like that. I like that challenge, and I love that what it creates. I may be in between Tiesto and Sander Van Doorn or something like that. And, the people that like their style of music may get turned on to something that I play. In the show it's the mostly live shows I take from my gigs around the world. And I presented it, I guess, for the past 12 years. It's called Profound Sounds. It's labor of love for sure. And I'll mention in the beginning of the show who some of the artists I play. So if someone's listening to a Tiesto show and then all of a sudden the show ends and then Josh Wink's Profound Sound show comes on and I say, hey, this is Josh Wink. This is a live set from a show in Tokyo that I did 2 months ago. You'll hear artists such as Slam, Jeff Mills, et cetera, et cetera. I could list the names. They're not coming on the top of my head right now, but it allows people who aren't into my genre or my style or may not even know me get turned on to new music. And that's what a DJ to me is really all about.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And it's
release its origins and,
right.
breaking new artists and stuff.
Well, and I think that's like the perfect format for it. I actually had a show on Diplo's Revolution for a few years as well. And that to me was
awesome.
that was the most fun part, was like you could play really interesting stuff that didn't necessarily have to work in a live context, that didn't necessarily have to be closely hewing to like who you are known to be as an artist, if that makes sense. Like, it's just like, oh no, this is just what I think is cool. And I'm the same as you. Like, I very much have a DJ mentality about pretty much everything I do. And that to me, even from when I was a kid, like it was just about curation, you know, like I was just the annoying kid trying to get my friends to listen to a bunch of weird stuff that I thought was really cool. And the fact that, you know, any of us are able to sort of do that in an adult context, I still find pretty entertaining.
I'm going to say something about this morning during my run when I was listening to your podcast with Boys Noise.
Please.
You said, and Alice kind of said, you know, you were talking about bangers and creating big records. And he has his label to play these big records and create bangers. And I'm weird when it comes to podcasts. I don't listen to audiobooks or podcasts a lot just because my mind just kind of goes everywhere. It's kind of like taking a little rubber Super Ball and throwing it in a bathroom, and it just goes everywhere off the walls. That's how my brain thinks. So listening to a podcast, as soon as someone says something, I don't listen to it. I think about what this little creature, this voice in my head, you know, where am I going with that? So you mentioned bangers, and I was like, you know, a lot has changed where I think that artists are afraid to make or put out records that aren't bangers or hands in the air moment kind of tracks. And to me, I think that sucks because there's a DJ used to play for the whole night or at least 3-4 hours, not 1 hour sets. And the whole concept, the whole idea of an hour-long set at a festival is just to make as many people jump up and down with their hands up and not go to their phones or, you know, to take a break.
Right.
And there's a lot of articism, if you want to conjugate that word that way, that is lost because people feel like they need, like, my music's not going to be recognized unless I make something really big or that sounds like a big record or it's going to make people go crazy and jump up and down. And I miss the deep artistic energy that artists have lost than they used to do. Unless you're making like, you know, some people take chances by doing albums and then they can put like an interlude track on there.
Yeah.
You know, but from my son, I learned that, you know, not everybody listens to albums. They listen to one track. And when I grew up, it was like you had a cassette and you put in the Walkman and you listened to the album. And then if you're lucky, you had auto reverse on your cassette recorder and you didn't have to flip it around and it went automatically and you got to hear the whole album. How the artist wants it to hear, you know, wants you to hear it with the ups and the downs and the peaks and the highs and the crescendos and the tension and the letdowns and the drop downs and the, you know, and that word banger just made me think. And I just feel like I wanted to address that right now, that I feel like a lot of that artistic integrity, also you talked about integrity in it as well too. Because I didn't know I was turned on to a new artist that you were talking about, that you're friends with.
Oh man.
Venture. He's on Boys Noise as well too.
It's on the tip of my brain. I know I remember this conversation. I'm trying to think who that was.
He's on Boys Noise and he does dubsteppy kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's going to come to me like
my phone. Anyways, I know it is because you're boys with him. And now when you listen to this back, you're going to be like, fuck Josh, man. He made me forget my friend's name. But you got a lot of
I'm
things
the worst
going on
with
in
that kind
moment.
of stuff, man. I'm the worst. Yeah.
But, you know, in this conversation. I don't know if it was with Alex or the other gentleman who I can't think of right now. And I looked up his music, and that's the beauty of, what you did was I didn't know of you, and I looked, and now I'm delving deeper and getting turned on by new artists. And I listened to your music as well too, and you did dubsteppy kind of stuff too.
Were you listening on Spotify? Out of curiosity?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, that's. Thank you for listening to any of it, first of all. But don't you hate it how Spotify doesn't let you select which tracks are highlighted on your profile? Like the top one, it's just like the top.
I always scroll down.
All right, good. That's great.
Scroll down, guy. I dig deeper.
Okay,
I'm not going to go into Spotify right now, but
no. But well, let me.
86% of all music on Spotify doesn't generate any income.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
And there's 2.7 million songs uploaded monthly.
Yeah, it's truly insane. I mean, Spotify's a whole nother discussion, but yeah,
120,000 uploads a day. But anyways, I listened to your music, and I didn't know that you created music as well too. So I got to learn by listening to your podcast, and that's what I love to do. I love to learn and be inspired and be inspiring to others. So you're talking about integrity, and the integrity of an artist nowadays is a tricky line to cross, because I think everybody just wants the end product, which is to headline festivals and, just be the big guy.
Yeah.
Or the big girl. And taking a chance isn't in the books anymore, I don't think. It's all about playing safe, big records. And I'm a little disappointed about that. And it's a shame, because this all came about because I listened to your podcast with Boys Noise about the word bang.
No, I love it. This is super interesting. I mean, it's also, I think, a problem because even in a DJ set, you need tracks with more energy, you need tracks with less energy in order to keep the flow of the set going. It's like a diminishing returns thing. I'm sure you've seen this a million times, as any DJ who's played at a festival has, but in like the modern festival context, sometimes you can tell like the crowd is just gassed out. Like they'll just get tired because everybody is playing bangers every second of every set. And there's been times where, I played a show, or I've seen a friend play a show where it's like, oh yeah, that's a good time slot, they're going to be nuts. And then the crowd's just kind of out of energy already because everybody already...
They did their cardio workout.
Right, exactly. And it's a weird thing. I don't know. I think part of it is that artists feel like it's so hard to get heard or seen or noticed at all. So they have to do something splashy. And I think a lot of people feel like, I don't think this is true, but I think a lot of people feel like there's kind of just, they're going to get one window. And if they don't really just smash it in this one look, this one opportunity,
they lost their chance.
Yeah, which I don't think is actually true, but I do understand why people feel that way in sort of the attention economy we live in right now.
Yeah, well, if you're not going to do it, then the guy after you is going to get your next job.
Right. Yeah.
So it's... Also, too, it's as an artist and a performer, growing up and being the DJ and the bar in the back with, in the corner where no one knows where the DJ is, and there's like a fog machine and a red siren light, and that's, it was about the music, but it wasn't about, no one knew where the DJ was, and now it's the DJ up 40 feet high on the jumbotrons and 100,000 people out in front of them. So anyways, it's a different concept being on a stage and looking out at 15 to 20,000 people. And if you don't do something, you feel awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the videos, I love it. You could tell someone did a video on a social media platform a couple years ago. And it's a video of them holding the camera, looking at the crowd, and like 20,000 people's out in front of them. And the crowd's just kind of going like this and looking at their phones. And the caption was something like, "Oh, how amazing. It's festival season." Where people are tired or waiting for the break, or you're not really paying attention, or, so sometimes when you're up there on the stage and you don't get a reaction, you feel like you're not doing your job. So what can I do? I mean, do I have to be naked? Do I have to juggle? Do I have to play the big records plus 6%, make it faster? It used to be is just if it's faster, you get more energy out of people. But I played a festival many years ago in Spain, and I played a different stage than Afrojack. And he's an old friend and colleague of mine as well, too, because he dabbled in the techno world before he was big Afrojack in the Netherlands.
Right.
And I remember just seeing him rock the shit out of the crowd. But if it wasn't if it wasn't the buildup and it wasn't the drop, people just were like, they were just like, they did the 40-meter dash and they were just like juicing up and drinking up and ready for the next buildup to come around. And there was this time where it was just kind of comical, where people would just stop dancing after the drop and then just check their phones and drink water. And then, when the snare comes in again, everybody starts grooving, and it became formulaic, and it's really stuck on. But the whole reason of me saying this is not to knock the scene and knock what it is. I mean, it is what it is. And I'm not saying anything else that it's changed. And I wish that there was more chances taken in terms of DJs playing and music being made. So it's not so safe and easy. You don't have to feel the pressure to make the biggest banger for you to get noticed.
Yeah.
And that's a big one for me that came about because of your podcast. So thank you.
Hey, thank you for listening. I mean, let me turn this back on you for a second. In the same vein, when I knew we were going to have this conversation, I was doing a little research. I was reading some old interviews of yours, listening to a bunch of your older music, and I came across a video interview with you from 1997 at the Love Parade. And
really?
Yeah. And it was awesome to see. I mean, you're in you got the bleached dreadlocks and, full like 90s Josh Wink regalia. But it was interesting hearing you talk. It's a short thing. It was like a 4 or 5 minute interview. And you were talking about the fact that coming out to the Love Parade, seeing, 1 million plus people like this, that there just wasn't a precedent for anything like this in the USA at the time, and that it seemed like such a different thing. And I think you talking about this idea of, the superstar DJ, we were talking about, Oakenfold with the picture of 1 million people behind him before that. Like, for you, what was that moment in the 90s when you started realizing that like people were looking at DJs as something other than what they were when you started, if that makes sense? Like, do you have memories of having that realization, or was it sort of just over time, the scene just picked up steam and more people started showing up?
It really kind of broke through the acceptance of radio, with certain songs leading the way, because it was an underground grassroots movement that started this out, and it had its inception in Chicago with house music and Detroit with techno music. And then it went overseas, the music, and then it just became a bigger thing because mostly in Europe, you don't have to be 21 years of age to get into an atmosphere that sells alcohol like it is in the US, like we talked about earlier. So you can be 16 years old and get into a club and get to hear this music. And alcohol is accepted and more respected overseas than it is here in America, with our laws at least. I guess I first started realizing that there's a big change when I would go overseas for gigs in the early 90s, and I would go to England or France or Belgium or Holland, and they had shows like MTV. Well, they had MTV, but there was specialty shows that focused solely on electronic music. And I was just like, wow, there's MTV's playing this? I mean, years later MTV had Amped.
Right.
And they just took all the songs that were big overseas and put them into their programming. And luckily I had a couple songs on there, so I kind of got a little bit more notoriety. But I first started to seeing it cross over when it went to music television stations like Viva TV in Germany or MTV in Europe. And then it just kind of slowly progressed where it wasn't just happening in Berlin with the Love Parade that Dr. Mata started, where it was just a parade of a couple thousand people. And then the next year it tripled, and the next year it quadrupled. And then you have 1 million people. And this is in the 90s, when it wasn't social media friendly. And you had to know it was a culture, and you had to live it and know it, not just bump into it because someone sent you a link on a post on your TikTok or Instagram or something like that. So it kind of organically happened where it was the snowball going down the hill, where it started small and then became bigger over time.
Yeah.
I think that a DJ, I learned at a young age. I started out when I was 13 as a mobile DJ. And I realized through this process that a DJ can do, I think the DJ has a responsibility for two things. One, entertain. I don't think it's a bad thing for a DJ to entertain.
No.
I mean, I did weddings, I did bar mitzvahs, sweet 16s, whatever. And I took requests and I worked with the people, and they wanted these songs played. And I learned how to, fade in and out and play the slow song and play the happy song and the song that everybody requested. So that was the entertainment aspect of it, getting on the mic, And then later on, I began to realize that there's an artistic purpose of being a DJ as well, too, where you can educate through your art of presenting this music. And I think DJs lost a little bit of that or aren't aware of it. And then also there's a bunch of DJs. There's, when you grew up in the 80s, there was like a DJ and then you had your artist. There weren't too many people doing the same thing. There were artists that were releasing techno and house music, and there were DJs playing it. And then nowadays it's like, if you're not making music, you're not playing out as a DJ.
Yeah, almost impossible to be a pure DJ and make a career off of it these days.
Yeah, so it's a unique multi-billion-dollar corporation that we're finding ourselves in.
Yeah, the money aspect too, I think it makes it unavoidable. It's a whole different conversation. But I mean, when you were coming up, like, that's the thing, right? It had to be about the passion. Like, did you even have an example of someone, like there weren't really superstars yet. Did you have anyone you were looking to of like, I want to be like X person?
No, I wanted to be in my thing growing up in Philly and doing the first Philly raves in Philly in the late 80s with my friends Blake Tart and I did the first Philly warehouse raves, and then
like first ever, right? Just to make sure that people know what we're talking about. Like we're talking about first ever raves in Philly.
In Philly, yeah. In 89. I wanted to be on a New York City flyer at a club in New York. That was my goal.
Right.
And then, I had goals. I had intentions and wants and desires, and that was one of them. And then the other one was I was DJing all the time growing up as a teenager, and I had all these ideas in my head. And why am I playing other people's music as a DJ when I have all these ideas and I want to get out, and then I want people to play my music as a DJ? And that was a really big thing for me. And that's something that, if people come up to me, fans, enthusiasts, someone that just wants to say hello. Sometimes there's a person that comes up to me and says, "Hey, Josh," and I say, "Yeah, that's me." And I say, "What's up?" And they say, "Well, what's one thing that you can tell me to, like, if I want to do what you're doing, like, how'd you start?" And I said, "Well, I think first and foremost, you follow your heart. You really want to do this because you're passionate and you love it. And you don't want to wake up and make the donuts. You want to go to work and love it and not have it become work. The other is make music, get into production, go be an intern in a studio, learn the gear, learn the process, learn the whole aspect of the music industry. Because if you don't make music, you're not going to get out of your own city. It's very difficult to be known solely, outside of your area without, otherwise you're just a local DJ playing at the local bar or club.
Yeah.
But if you release music, then next thing you know, people are reading in NME or Jockey Slut magazine or, certain tools that people read to hear about music, NMS, Music Journal. And people get to know you outside of your city, and then you could travel the world because of the music that you made and people know you. So this is a really big thing. To getting back to your question of, is there anybody that you looked up to? I looked up to the scene. Like I wanted to play in Philadelphia. I looked up to a bunch of DJs. There was Bobby Startup, Chip Dish, Ricky Lee, Robbie Tronco. These were people that were 10 years older than me or so, because I started at a young age. One of the other things that you mentioned or you talk about in some of your podcasts is that you're dealing with artists who were starting out at 14, 15 years old, which was really only 3-4 years ago.
Right.
This was not something a teenager usually did in the 80s. It wasn't an avenue where people would just, as a teenager, say, "Hey, I want to be a DJ." And I got into it because I wanted to get in radio. That's my original aspect of it. And I wanted to do what you said. Like, my serious show is different from how I envision it to be because it's a continuous mix. I want to curate or run a show and play different kinds of music. That's not just all, dance music.
Right.
I want to have this and that and really open up people's minds and not have the responsibilities to have a full dance floor, where you can listen to it while you're cooking or in the shower or lying down or having sex or whatever it may be. You don't have the responsibilities of having to play a banger and keep the dance floor. And that's the beauty of, DJing on the radio. But I looked up to those Philly DJs. Then up in New York, I would go see Dave Morales. Every now and then I would try to sneak in. And I'm still 17 years old, so getting to the New York clubs, I have to be 18. But, Danny Tenaglia. I just missed the days of David Mancuso and Larry Levan at the Paradise Garage. I missed that. But Todd Terry, Louis Vega, Kenny Dope, Roger Sanchez, the New York kind of guys. But they were all house. I mean, I also grew up wanting to DJ and be part of the whole Chicago crew. I wanted to start making music because of Acid House out of Chicago in the 80s. And, hearing music growing up, like from Marshall Jefferson or Little Louis or Mr. Fingers, or later even Cashmere Green Velvet, DJ Pierre, Armando, these people. And then in Chicago, that was Chicago, but Detroit, Kevin Saunderson, Juan Atkins, Derek May, Carl Craig, Kenny Larkin, and then the whole aspect of the +8 records of Canada, Detroit, Richie Houghton, John Acquaviva, Dan Bell. These people became my colleagues in my group, but originally growing up out of Philadelphia, I was just at the same time releasing music and DJing that they were as well, but they were on a different level because they were in a different city than I am.
Sure. And you're a bit younger too.
Well, we're all the kind of same age in terms of like Carl and Derek. No, Derek's a little bit over, but Carl Craig and Richie Houghton and I are the same age. And but the Chicago people were a little bit older than me. At least the DJs, Frankie Knuckles or Ron Hardy. The New York crews were always a little bit older. But they were all the house side, and I was also a little techno and deviant house. And I would never really fit in between the techno. My techno was too housey, and my house was too techno-y.
Right,
but
right.
One of the beautiful things that a journalist once said was that, you could have a house club and Josh Wink can play and he's playing techno and the house people like it and they're not questioning it. Or going to the techno club and Josh Wink is playing his version of techno and the techno people are hearing house, but it's okay. And to me, I didn't know where I belonged. I was a techno guy releasing records on house labels like Strictly Rhythm and Nervous.
Right. And yeah, I mean, in some ways, it feels like maybe the definitions were a little looser because you guys were, literally making the definitions as you went for some of it. It actually makes me think of one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about was that you have the 607 Sessions release that you're dropping. And I know at least the Realize from that is that already out or coming out soon?
No, it comes out in July, the first or second week in July.
Okay, yeah, I got a stream of it, so I wasn't sure if it was out yet or not. But
not yet.
Yeah, that's cool, and it's a good little preview for people to get excited for it. But basically, and please correct me if I'm wrong, these are sort of rare early works from back in the days that we are just talking about of yours that, just unreleased music from that era that you're kind of going back and revisiting and finally putting out into the world. Also, it's the 30th anniversary of some of your biggest songs, Higher State of Consciousness, one of my favorite electronic music songs of all time, and, Don't Laugh. And basically all I'm trying to say is like, this is an interesting time to sort of look back at what you were doing back then. And I wonder for you, when you look back at any of this, whether it's 607 Sessions, music that up until now has been released, versus, something like Higher State of Consciousness, an iconic, like era-defining song. If you look back now, like, what do you notice hearing your own productions from that time? Like, are you able to sort of identify what you were doing differently back then, or like what made your music stand out, or what made people connect to your music in the way that they obviously did?
I don't really know. It's a good question. And thank you for the lead up to this as well. Matt, who is kind of like my manager and he runs Ovum Recordings. He's been a part of my life for a long time. And, there's this guy named Tommy. And Tommy's like a clubber raver in Glasgow, Scotland. And he was a huge fan. I mean, he came from Glasgow all the way to Philadelphia just to hear me play on a Wednesday night in Philadelphia back in the 90s or the early 2000s. And I played a record called Realize back then. And he would always go on about, when is this coming out? When is this track? You know, and I thought I lost it, this track. I thought I lost it in a theft, a fire, a flood. And then when I'm moving studio, as I told you I'm doing now,
right,
I found a bunch of things that I did during this pre-period of higher states of consciousness, size 9, I'm ready, and don't laugh, the holy grail, as they say, of dance music, blah, blah, blah. By the time I was making tracks on Nervous Records, like How's the Music, Nervous Build Up, the first release on Nervous's offshoot, Sorted Records, I was doing all this music. I was just living, eating, traveling, DJing, producing. And I have a lot of music that I didn't release. I didn't do anything with. And I realize now that I happen to find them again, that Matt is saying, dude, you got to get this out. This is great. This is what the kids are playing now. They're going back to 90s music. And the biggest part of your music was the 90s, even though, you know, I haven't left.
Right.
It's not like I'm just capitalizing on higher states. You know, I put out music that people still play and they buy and they stream and they like. And I feel blessed. Every day I'm blessed to know that I'm still doing it rather than burning out. But it's a time to put out contemporary music, but also accept, like, I don't want to say I don't look back in the past. You know, I try to be in the now and in the present, trust the future by accepting my past. And there's a lot of music out there that is being played now that is influenced, as cyclical, circular things are. There's like a generation loop,
yeah,
of where people are starting to wear baggy raver clothes again, or glow stick. You know, things will come back in style, and a lot of the music that I was making with the healthy rave community in America and the world are starting to appreciate again. And I just happen to kind of fall in a treasure trove of old music, and this was something through Tommy in Glasgow. He kind of got me trying to find this, and I just happened to find it. And I don't play it as much because, you know, there's certain things that I hear in music that identifies a certain point in time. Like the kick in it is very 90s for me, and how I engineered my kicks then. It was very punchy mid-range. And nowadays, it's all about low bass and sub bass. And when you play a record from the past, it's lacking the complete frequency spectrum.
Yeah.
That wasn't able to translate into making this music in the 90s or earlier. And so I forget to play a lot of it because I don't think it would mix well together. But we leaked this out to a couple people, and they're like, dude, what is this? What, you know, how'd you do that? And what did you know? And I said, well, it's something I made in 1993. And I'm on the firm belief, whether it's my music or other people's music, that, you know, good music knows no time. You know, it's just on you, and it's there. It's like a tattoo. You know, well, that's not a good example because tattoos can be regrets as well.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about a tattoo is that you can get a tattoo removed. You can't get music removed once you release it. So you have to make sure it's the right thing. So yeah, 607 Sessions is going to be coming out. It's a series based on older music of mine. I kind of cringe, but other people hear it for the first time and they're like, dude, this is great. When did you do this? And I was like, I did it in 93. And they're like, are you serious? I thought you said you just recreated it with your analog gear in the studio. And I said, no, this is actually from that time. So the 607 series through Ovum Recordings is going to be a series of 607 because that's the street address I lived on when I made this music in my bedroom studio. I made so much of my music back then, Higher States, Don't Laugh, my whole album on Nervous, most of my whole album on Ovum through Columbia, Sony, Here. Even the track with Trent Reznor, as we were talking about earlier, Jerry in the Bag, that was
in the bedroom studio as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's a neat and fun time. And I'm still happy to make contemporary music that's accepted and respected, and also release older music that hopefully will be appreciated as well too, for being what it is. You know, a lot of people are like, what did you do to that vocal? And they're still very like, how did you do this? And because the production is very different then. It was hardware. It wasn't a computer 35,000 feet up in the air on headphones, you know, doing a track in between international trips.
Right.
With DSPs and plugins and VSTs.
Right.
I was thinking about Spotify earlier. Right. Digital service providers. So it's a different way of thinking, and records were made different back then as well too. They were made for, you know, I'm going to skip again, but I'll come back.
Please.
John Digweed gave me a really great compliment. At least I think it was a compliment. He said, you make music like people are playing records still. So however you want to take that. But I looked at it as a compliment. But I thought about it, what he said, and I was like, you're right, dude. I think of a DJ still playing a vinyl record from start to end.
Right. Where
it has an intro. It takes its time to get there. None of these 3.5 minute tracks that just get into the meat and potatoes, like in the first, if the bass line isn't in by the fourth measure, you're like, you lost interest in the crowd.
Right.
You know, I was more concerned with having people on the dance floor. This is me. This is pure me. I would like a dark club with a fog machine and a siren, a red siren, and have people with their eyes closed, lost and swaying in the music. And that's what I connect with most. I don't always connect with the thousands of people jumping up and down. I connect to that one person or those 7 people with their eyes closed, lost in what I'm presenting to them.
Yeah.
And I made music, and all my colleagues and friends and peers used to make music for records that would tell a story, and you can't skip through it. You can't set hot cue points. You know, the only way you can get further in the track is by lifting up the needle and putting it on the groove, or having someone bump your turntable and it takes a minute out of your song. So it tells a story, and I love that. I love to still be able to do that. And I think about that when I make music nowadays, and how it's going to translate for people that, you know, listen to my music and say, why doesn't it get into it any sooner? You know, why does it take so long? Or I'll just edit it, or I'll do something like that. And that's a difference too in things nowadays. And I'm inspired by those things, and I take certain things and I apply them, and some things don't work for me, so I don't apply them. You know, that's about like my shirt. What it's, I don't know if you can read it. But
yeah. Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change.
You got it.
Yeah. Nice.
And that's a Stephen Hawkins quote. But if we're able to adapt to change, because that's the most constant thing in human existence, then we can be all right. But there we can wrap it together with the whole integrity part of the old podcast that you said. How do we change with integrity?
That's a great question. Man, that's a great question.
You know, and it's something that you personally need to ask. You know, I don't think a lot of people in the industry, they were playing house their whole lives, and then they heard techno, and then all of a sudden they switched and they're a techno artist and DJ. You know, they got shit from a lot of people because they're like, oh, they just changed and they want to make money, and they're just seeing how it's a popular thing. And I'm just like, let them be. Just let them. You know, let them take their course. They enjoy it. They got inspired. They want to move. They want to progress. They want to change authentically, I imagine. And that's the question. You have to live with yourself. So be authentic as possible with your choices and your decisions and what you want and what your heart wants.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think this is something I talk about a lot on the podcast, is like, if you're able to, the closer you're able to do that, to like match what your heart wants with the stuff you're putting out in the world, and, you know, something you feel like you can really stand behind, generally you will get rewarded for that on a long enough timeline. And it's sort of the only way to like really ensure long-term success in the sense of like, I am happy with what I'm doing and I still enjoy what I'm doing and I still feel like what I am doing is worthwhile. It's kind of the only way to ensure that, at least the only way
Bingo.
I know.
You said it right there as music to my ears. It's true. You have to live with yourself. So enjoy and own up to your shit.
Totally.
If you want that way, then just go balls to the wall and just be that. If you want to go that way, just own up to it and be it. Live it, be it. You know,
absolutely.
And like, and deal with it.
Yeah. And, you know, even if you're moving towards something that maybe you're worried isn't as popular or isn't, you know, the hot thing or whatever, it's still the only decision to make if you want to, you know, enjoy your life. And like you said, you kind of have to have this faith that the cycles of music are going to come around anyway, you know? And so it's like, regardless of where they're at, you still have to do what is true to you. It sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but it's one of those things that I think is very easy to forget or to get sort of turned around on in a long enough career, you know?
Well, luckily I'm able to look back on it like that. I mean, I just turned 55 and I've been doing it for a long time, and it's still a joy to me. I still have passion. And this is one thing that I really hope for anybody that's getting started or in it, is that they're doing what they want to do for as long as they want and they're happy with it. And the fact that I can still be doing this after starting out as a DJ when I was 13 is just like a pig in shit moment. It's really glorious. It's interesting. And I don't like to take the old man or old person mentality by saying, oh, it's changed. And of course it's changed. You know, that's life. Life is going to change. It's just not the same as it used to be. And it's how we tend to look at it. And I'm speaking very optimistically. I recorded a record on my friend Jimster's record label called Free Range last year, or a year and a half. I think it was a year and a half ago. And the EP was called the Half Full EP, because I was getting kind of Larry David-ish like in my thoughts and becoming too sarcastic and negative and crabby about things, that because everything after COVID just totally made us go in different directions, because it was nothing like our humanity has ever dealt with before, and everything changed. So anyways, I'm trying to be more positive than I am the opposite of positive. I want to say the word.
That's good. Yeah, I think that kind of practice is something we need to sort of consciously do to maintain sometimes. And
I love the fact that I get to be turned on still by new things, such as your podcast and yourself. And and it makes me want to delve deeper and go like I'm wanting to learn about new artists, and just by God, that the name of the artist is going to kill me.
I know. I'm going to have to go back.
You didn't get it yet?
No, not yet, but I'll look it up after this. I'll send you a message on Instagram
Venture?
or something. Venture. God, I don't know.
I don't want to be distracted and
yeah. I'll figure it out later.
Your attention is mine. But anyways, I want to delve deeper and go into and learn new things. And I looked up this one artist and I heard his music, and then I scrolled further down on the DSP that I was using, and it said more artists like this. And I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. So I get to learn and I get to be inspired. And I think one of my true purposes here in this existence for me and this life is to be inspired by others authentically and have other people be inspired by me. And I love how that works out together. And I'm really open to being inspired. Now, Matt, who I talked about before, who's my label manager and manager, he's like, he and I kind of shadow box all the time about, I get frustrated and I say, oh, well, why isn't this happening? And then he's like, well, it's not that you're not making good music. You're making great music. It's just that you really need to study and get around what's going on right now musically. And, these people growing up and these young kids who are having success now, a lot of them grew up listening to your music and based their style, and they would love to work with you. And he said, look at Green Velvet, Kashmir, he's been, I'm lucky to call him a friend, and he's a fucking talented friend.
Yeah.
He is just insane. And he's kind of like, I don't want to say Bowie, but
he's unbelievable. Yeah.
He's able to capitalize and shine off of his old catalog, which is a mixture of deep house, raw house, techno house. His style is Chicago house, and then work with all the new kids that are today coming out that want to work with him. And he surfs the line really well, but Cash is a unique creature and he can do it. I don't know. I don't know if I could do what he does, but I'm a little bit more quiet and reserved than he has his alter ego. And I haven't found that alter ego in performance yet.
Although, let me make a point off that real quick is that, obviously you can tell when Kashmir's on stage, he's having fun. The whole thing is fun, right? Like he's the consummate entertainer. But I think, like, looking back at Higher State of Consciousness, Don't Laugh, like that's something that stood out to me. I was trying to think for myself, like, what is it about these songs that I find so transcendent or like enduring? And I think this is another thing that I think we've lost a bit in the modern era of production is like, there's this underlying sense of fun to these records that I think you really, I don't know if it was intentional. I don't even know if you agree with me, but to me, I'm like, you injected this like sense of fun into these records that they're multifaceted. They are, I would say, bangers. They are, they work in a lot of contexts. They could be called a lot of different genres, I think. But I think there's this sense of fun. Like, I don't know, for me, Higher State, like you were talking about how you wanted records to have stories, to tell stories. And the way a track like that unfurls, I still remember like the first couple of times I heard that track, and I, like, not even exaggerating, like I remember like I laughed out loud hearing that track. And I mean that as a very high compliment of just like, I cannot believe someone took an idea this far. Like, this is just so far beyond. I think other people would have stopped halfway through that record. You know what I mean?
Don't Laugh, you're saying?
I'm saying Higher State, but kind of don't. Okay. I kind of Don't Laugh too. Higher State, just the literally just how high the synth goes, how long it keeps going. Like there's just this sense of fun of like, no, we can push it further. That I don't know, man. It's something I don't see in a lot of modern records, of just like really taking you on the ride, really pushing it beyond the boundaries. And like, I don't know if you agree with me, but there's this sense of fun where I was like, I can feel how much fun you had making it when I listened to it, you know?
Well, I do. Thank you. And who cares if I agree with you or not? It's your opinion, dude.
Well, I mean, no, I care a little bit. But
I mean, that's part of growing up being an artist, is just acceptance, you know, whether or not you think people are gonna, I try to be thick-skinned because people can say words that hurt. And you put your creativity and your soul on the line, and then, you know, someone comes on, a journalist, a critic, and they say something and, you know, just shoots you down. But
well, to be clear, when I was talking about laughing out loud, that's a pure joy response. It like,
I got you.
Could not be happier. Yeah.
Cynical in a sense, but I mean, that record really is kind of a mistake, how it just became the behemoth monster that it is, and has crossed generations and has never kind of left, and it just still, momentum is rolling after 30 years. And you know, it's funny, you said you made bangers, and I got a tinge. I'm like, no, I don't fucking make bangers, dude. I make intelligent, thought-provoking music that conveys emotion and feeling, and it's not about just partying. But that was the inner voice of me. But I listened to what you said, and I'm happy and fortunate that my music can help people live their lives and have my music be soundtracks to their lives. And it makes you smile and makes you happy. And I hope it does the same for other people as well, my music in general, not just those couple records. But I mean, that was a wild record, because I took my heavy influences of UK hardcore drum and bass that I was really into in the early 90s, and Chicago Acid House, and I kind of melded it together through my Josh Wink living in Philadelphia self. And it was like the perfect storm. It just happened. And it was fun being at Love Parade in 95, 96, when you had all these trucks amongst millions of people in the streets. Not millions, but million. And all different DJs were playing that track that would play. I mean, you'd have your trance DJs, your hard techno DJs, your house DJs, all be playing on these trucks with thousands of people coming behind them, walking up the main street in Berlin, encompassing 1 million people. And I would hear my music nonstop. It was a really unique, fun time. And I'm happy that it created happiness for you out of that. I was literally thinking you were talking about Don't Laugh, because, you know, that makes people laugh or cry. It's creepy or it's funny.
Of course. Well, and I love that track too. And it's another one that I think still has that sense of like fun, or just, I don't know. Like even the reason I use that bangers term, other than just to make a joke about, we were talking about it earlier, but like there's something to it where it can be many things at once. And I think Don't Laugh is that way. I think Higher State is that way. And a lot of your work that, like you said, maybe sometimes you listen to it and it's creepy. Maybe sometimes it's funny. You're dancing the whole time. Like it's this interesting, multifaceted kind of music that I don't know if you can even define sort of what goes into making something that feels that way. But I think it's, at least for me, what I'm coming around to, if we're talking about like the difference between sort of more disposable music, or like the short attention span music we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation versus, some of your best work is that, yeah, it can be all of those things where it's not just one thing and you can have a wide range of reactions to it. I don't know if that makes sense to you or if you are even able to sort of identify like what ingredients have to go into a record to make it feel that way. But I think it's something you're very good at. And I think that outside of the sonics of it kind of defines what you do for me a bit now that we're talking about it more.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear that. I look back on my music introspectively as well. And I think, what is there that's similar in all the different kinds of music that I do? And like Alex Boysnoise, he does a little bit of everything. And a lot of the artists that you have on your show do a little bit of everything nowadays. And that's a sign of a diverse, talented artist that is doing good things. And I like to think that one thing that's congruent with it all is tension. And that's the basis of my music, is that there is tension in the music. There's buildups. Higher states, it's just like, when is it going to go over the edge? How high is it going to go? How piercing? How many times am I going to have to think about putting in earplugs? I Am Ready as well is another track that snare roll buildup and that breakdown, there was like no beats for a minute and a half or longer. And the tension of when is it, it's like you're trying to sneeze and you can't sneeze, or you're trying to orgasm and you can't orgasm, or it's just this tension. And the tension of the music and the buildup, but there's also a tension psychoacoustically as well, too, in terms of the balance of the frequencies that are cultivated in the music. There's harsh with sublime. And I love being able to balance and be aware of that when I compose my music. But first and foremost, it has to have some sort of tension in it. And even I do ambient projects as well, too. And even in the ambient music, there's some underlying feel-good tension that's in there. Like, what's going to come next? What's going to, is it going to end? Is it going to stop? So to answer your question, the thing that I find the most apparent in all of the music that I do is tension.
Was that something you were attracted to when you were coming up, like in other artists? I'm always curious, like, where does that tendency come from? Where does that attraction to tension come from? Was there any early music you heard that had that kind of thing that really flipped a switch for you?
Another good question. I was raised listening to all different kinds of music, but I wouldn't say that there's one thing in particular that made me focus on tension. There's obvious tension of like me being into punk rock music when I was a teenager. That's obvious tension and buildup and angst and all that. But I mean, I grew up listening to Stevie Wonder and Brian Eno and James Brown and Thomas Dolby and Cocteau Twins and Robert Guthrie and Dead Can Dance and George Duke and Tangerine Dream and Pet Shop Boys and all different kinds of music, which I guess is tension in itself when you kind of draw them all together.
Right.
But they're different form. I grew up listening to everything, and that's maybe what drew it in, but I wouldn't say there's one thing in particular that is based on the tension. Like, I grew up and listened to it, and I'm trying to think of like cutting lawn when I was young and listening to like Duran Duran or Earth, Wind and Fire. And those were the cassettes that I would listen to all the time. And would there be any tension in the music? And I can't think of anything right now besides the typical like punk rock stuff.
Right.
But
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always have to be, I think, like a clear line you can draw. I think for me, what I realize more and more, especially about me DJing, it's a little less about the music I make, but it's, when I'm doing it, it's for me, it kind of, I feel like, oh, this is when the world makes the most sense to me. It's like, oh, this is a nice way to sort of organize the way I see the world and the way the music in the world flows together in my head. Like it's almost just an exercise for me, and hopefully people who connect with anything I do, to kind of be like, this is me, this is how I see the world, kind of thing. And maybe I don't know if this is true for you. For me, it's like, well, even if there's a way I feel that I can't fully express in words, then maybe I can just express it this way instead. And I think for a lot of kids, a lot of young people making music, it probably takes that role as well of just, I don't really know what I'm feeling, but this is maybe the best way I can tell you about it.
Well, I said my piece.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It wasn't even a question. No response required. But
No, I agree with you, and I follow what you're saying. I think I don't know what it is, but we are somehow unconsciously. People sometimes ask, like, who are you inspired when you make music? And I say, well, there's not one thing in particular I'm inspired by, but I'm non-directly influenced by my existence. So I can walk in a city in Stockholm and just be inspired by the architecture, and then walk the streets of Paris and be inspired by the food, and then go to New York and be inspired by the art. And, so I can listen to a DJ at a club and be inspired by the music they play, or listen to the BBC and hear Giles Peterson show and listen and be inspired by him. But I wouldn't say that there's one thing in my life that I get inspiration from. More or less, I get non-directly influenced by my surroundings and what bombards me being in this world as Josh Wink.
I think that's good. I think, if you're able to sort of take everything in equally, that probably, I mean, this is a very sort of woo-woo discussion at this point, but it's like, I think that probably gives the truest output. If you're able to take everything in equally, it probably gives the truest output, Well,
I mean, I imagine I am influenced and I am inspired by lots of different people. And if I listen to drum and bass, I may want to sit down and make a drum and bass track, based on what I like and what I hear. If I make a punk rock record, I imagine maybe being influenced by, Minor Threat or Bad Brains or The Exploited or Black Flag or something like that. And if I want to make a reggae record, then maybe I'm going to be inspired by Steel Pulse or Black Uhuru or King Tubby or Lee Scratch Perry or Bob Marley. I don't sit down and say, okay, there's this one track and I want to emulate it.
Of course.
I appreciate it. I love it. But maybe it'll influence and come out in my production just because it non-directly influenced me, and it's somewhere in my unsubconscious where it is a part of me. I mean, I'm not talking about plagiarism here or anything. Like, I'm trying to make this kind of music, and I don't know how many people make music like that. It's hard not to be inspired or influenced by anybody in today's world.
Of course.
Any kind of art, whether it be architecture, culinary, music, painting, dance, we see stuff and we're inspired because it's in our everyday life. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go and try to copy and do something. I mean, there's no copyrights on certain things, or maybe there are, but I think if you make new wave music, then you can make new wave music without having to sound like The Cure or Susie and the Banshees or something like that.
Yeah, of course. There's a good way and a bad way to be inspired by something. There's no question.
A bad way? What's a bad way?
Well, just copying, sort of what you're saying of like just hearing something and instead of sort of making your take on it, just saying, I want to have this thing that I like,
Well, it's funny because there's a lot of music that's come out over the years that I feel bases itself on my music. At a point in time, a lot of records sounded like my records. And I looked at that as the best part of copycatism is adulation and praise because someone wants to be you or make music that sounds like you. And I mean, there are people that base their 303s on how it sounded in higher states. But, I grew up listening to the acid house sound of Chicago, and I just wanted a 303 and make acid house music because of them. I just kind of made it my own thing by mistake.
Sure. But I think that's the key is, so, whatever those mistakes were, whatever of yourself that you injected into it, that's what, starts the new branch on the tree.
Yeah. I was listening to your music this morning when I was on my run, and then I listened to this other artist that we can't think of. And I was thinking about how much dubstep has morphed and changed. And, it started as a kind of a bridge between UK two-step and drum and bass coming out of South London, I guess, Croydon or so, Big Apple Records or something like that. And then it then morphed into, it just goes on outshoots, and like Skrillex goes and does his own thing and took it in his direction and has influenced that sound, even with drum and bass now. And that seems natural, and that's a natural progression for me, rather than trying to take someone's sound and make it into their own.
Yeah.
Even though that's kind of what happened. But that's progression and change, progression. And you talked about that in the interview with Boys Noise as well. And I heard his conflict between making club records and then working with big artists.
Right.
And his dilemma of like being underground, overground, and and the balance that some of us have to deal with, I was presented with a couple things in the early parts of my career, and it was difficult because, when those 3 life-changing records came out for me, The Higher States, Don't Laugh, and I Am Ready, all in 1 year, 3 different records that broke on worldwide. If I made music after that point, and there were people that wanted to hear similar music. Like, why doesn't Josh Wink make the music sounding like Higher States of Consciousness? And then there's those people, if I did make that music, if I continued doing that sign up breakbeat acid house with Josh Wink sound, they'll be like, oh, all of his music sounds the same. I don't like him. I wish he did something new. So you can't please everybody. And that's
Absolutely.
why earlier I was talking about it being thick-skinned or thin-skinned, because, as much as you don't want to take it in, you're aware. And I make music because I love to make music. And I'm fortunate to have been composing and making it for so many years. And the fact that the new kids that are coming up appreciate it and know it. And even the kids that don't may find out, and that's cool. But it was a unique time, and I still think I see it in people finding that line in between making something the same or growing and progressing and doing something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want that change for people. I want them to be able to push the boundaries and not have to live and realize of what, because other people are doing, they have to do the same thing. You know, like I used to clear dance floors when I would play drum and bass in a techno set. You know, I took the chance. It sucked in the end when, you know, you have a packed dance floor at a festival, you know, 5,000-6,000 people in front of you, and then you take a chance because of my history of DJing and playing weddings and entertaining and this and that. I'm going to try something new and different. And it's not being authentic to me if I don't follow through.
Right.
And that's when I want to stop, is when I can't do that. I realize the importance of being able to entertain. So I try to work it out.
Of course. Yeah. It's, and again, I'll bring this back. The tension in between those two roles, somewhere in the middle there, I think, is the sweet spot that makes a really good DJ, that makes a really good producer. Is, you know, you're kind of trying to do a little bit of both. And if you really hit the right spot, that's when it's the best, you know?
I just thought about that. You heard, how did you hear of Jerry in the Bag, the track I did with Trent Reznor?
Oh, I mean, I was a teenager at the time. I bought the album, and
really?
I was also a huge Nine Inch Nails fan at that time. I was following, huge Nine Inch Nails fan and a huge dance music kid. So, I mean, I was following both ends. But yeah, no, I bought the album, man. That track I listened to like a million times when I was like 17 years old. And I'm so glad you brought it back up, because I wrote down, I wanted to make sure I asked you the story of that track and how it came about. It's interesting to hear it contextualized of sort of coming off of all of these big hits and having maybe external expectations, people who either want you to do more of the same or want you to change, being on a big platform. Like, what is the story of that track? How did that happen?
Well, there was a woman that was friends with our publicist at Sony. You know, Ovum Recordings was an independent label, started in 1994. And then we got a distribution production deal through Rough House Records, which was the label from the Fugees and Cypress Hill and Criss Cross. And they were based in Philadelphia, but their parent label was Columbia Sony. So they brought us in, and we were very fortunate to have that connection. And our publicists at Sony Columbia knew a girl that was, I think, dating Trent at the time. I don't know if she was dating him or just friends with him.
Sure.
But she kind of got into his ear and said, you should do a track with Josh Wink because he's done this and he's upcoming. And I mean, it's not like I was upcoming. I was already releasing music for 10 years at that point. But so it was through a connection that my publicist had with a girl that knew her was dating Trent. So I sent him the track, and he was like, dude, this is dope. And we worked back and forth when he had his studio in New Orleans.
Right.
I sent him the track, and then we worked back and forth through ADAT tape. And I sent him the majority of the track, and he just did his magic on it. And it was another track. The reason why I mention it again, because we're talking about tension. And I think that song is another song full of, and that we didn't go around. More or less, people had to be fans of mine and got the album to know that Trent Reznor was on it. You know, we didn't exploit the fact that he was on it, which was a personal thing that I didn't want to do. I wanted people to happen upon it or just buy the album, be surprised. But it was a fun track. And I was really happy and surprised. And I feel blessed to be in the group of people that have worked with him as well, because it doesn't happen that much.
Very small circle, man. Yeah, it must have been like perfect, right time, right place for him to hop on too. Because yeah, he really almost never does that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not too far in age difference, but I remember when Pretty Hate Machine came out, and I was a Billboard dance reporter, DJ, and I got like all the upfront promos, and I remember getting that on TVT of Down in It, I think, was the first promo that I got from them. And then to be working with him. And then when I did the tour with Meat Beat Manifesto and Consolidated, he came out to the show up in New York at, I forget the name of the venue, but that was the first time I met him after we were dealing with each other through studios, through ADATs. And that was fun. That was a nice organic. I wish I did more collaborations. I haven't really worked with too many people. And what Matt says at Ovum is probably more like I have to connect and, connect with certain people that I find inspiring that are popular now. And I've reached out to some people, which I won't name, but they're kind of busy and it's hard to pin down a time to do some stuff.
Yeah,
and
I feel like there would be so many people who would be very stoked to get that email from you, though. I mean, even
help me out.
Absolutely, yeah. I would be amazed if I have any connections you don't. But absolutely, it makes me think of like even Chris Lake remixing "How's Your Evening So Far." I mean, there's still a lot of Josh Wink fans out there who are now working DJs, no question.
Well, if you come to anybody or think of anything that would come about, I would love to take that plunge and maybe work with someone. I was supposed to work with Kink and Wink. He's done some stuff on Ovum as well. His first big kind of breakout record was on Ovum. And it's just been hard to work with him on time because he's just nonstop and he's a dad now. And yeah, everybody's hard to pin down. Like Chris Lake is just like uber busy.
Of course.
His management was like, he's got his whole year booked up, and because he wanted to do the remix of Don't Laugh. And I sent him the parts and he wasn't able to work on it because how busy he is.
Right.
And he's an old friend as well. And I'm so happy that he's making and have the career that he's had and having. But yeah, I don't know. I sometimes do vocals. People come up to me and ask me to do vocals. Matador asked me to do some vocals for him. Eats Everything asked me to do vocals for him. Gregor Tresher, who's a colleague and label mate, I did vocals for him. This kind of interesting thing that I'm doing vocals where I usually just do it myself and sample myself doing it. So I don't know how I can work with other people. I mean, the last collaboration I did, full-on collaboration, was with David Truncate in California. And I was out there for a gig and I stayed a couple extra days and we just worked on 2 days of music. We came up with 4 tracks and it was kind of just really organic and it worked out so well. And I hope that can happen with other artists as well. And I don't want to be known as like a throwback old school guy. I want to be treated like someone who's making relevant, good music sonically, artistically, integrity wise now as well, without having to rely solely on music of my past. There's certain words I cringe on. And I've realized from this morning, one of the words is bangers.
Right.
And the other one, I think, is, what's the other word? I just lost my train of thought.
Well, I think one of the things you were just talking about of like only being known for your old stuff and not as like a vibrant artist. I think like there's that term legacy artist that is
legendary.
Oh,
that
legendary.
Was the other term.
Yeah.
The legendary producers. And I don't call myself that, but I guess it's free range to anybody that wants to call someone legendary. But I just feel like Josh Wink or just Josh, I happen to still be doing this music over 30 years. And it's fun that the new generation coming up, they were raised on the music and that of my generation. of the group of people, the generation of people making electronic music in the 80s and 90s. And their parents used to go out to the gigs, and then they had kids, and then they played our music to them growing up. And now they're the ones that are making the music that they grew up with. It's really kind of fun to be part of that.
I mean, yeah, I don't know, man. It's very cool that you're still as engaged and excited and just it's sort of in the same way that, like, I hear you talk about what you were excited about back then. I hear you talk about what you're excited about now. And it's very cool that it's like a lot of the same stuff. I think a lot of people lose that over time, and it's inspirational that you haven't, seemingly.
Well, just to be honest, there's so many artists coming out nowadays that it's impossible to keep up on everything. And someone says something, "Oh, do you know so-and-so?" I'm like, who's so-and-so? And they're like, "You don't know him?" And I'm thinking about that, and I'm really hard on myself because I took pride in eating and living and breathing what I do. This was my world. I knew everything. I tried to know everything. I just tried to take it in and absorb it and be a sponge of knowledge of music, both through as a DJ and as a producer. And now I can't. And I feel a little bit of shame that I don't. I mean, this is my therapy shit.
Right.
But that I can't keep up and I don't know everything. And it kind of started out, I remember I was at the airport and we were coming back from a trip with Matt and the crew from Ovum, Winter Music Conference years ago. Maybe it was 2009, 7, something like that. And there was a restaurateur in Philadelphia named Steven Starr. And he has a bunch of restaurants all over the world and America. He's very important in the culinary world for restaurants. And he had a son. And I remember we were waiting around baggage claim, and Matt was talking to Steven and his son about, what kind of music does this, 10-year-old like, or maybe he was 9 years old. And he said, Skrillex. And I said, what's a Skrillex? not being funny or facetious.
No, of course, yeah.
Like, I never heard of this person before, and I'm hearing about it through like a preteen. And it made me, at that point, it made me think of me and my part in what I'm doing. And if I'm doing enough, if I'm committing and devoting enough time to what I do, because I used to be on top of it with knowing everything, like what I think is everything. But I mean, you heard the bands that I was influenced by. So yeah. I still keep on touch and understood. Like, I mean, there's a new Brian Eno with Birdie Wolf that just came out that is a phenomenal album. And I'm very much into the Ilbian ambient music of Harold Budd and Daniel Luez and Robert Flip and Patrick O'Hearn and Brian Eno. And I'm still also involved in the jazz. And, Ornette Coleman just had a release that came out, a re-release. And, how many times can I go to Pitchfork and be bombarded by new music reviews and my son, who's totally into hip hop now and turning me on to bands that I didn't even know about and marble rap. And, I'm like, oh shit, am I becoming too old not to be? Or is a question for you too, I guess, is there just so much music that we can't? I took pride in knowing a little bit of balance in everything, not just being a horse with blinders on and just one thing. I
mean, I do think there is now too much for anyone to keep up with.
Okay.
That's my theory. I mean, yeah.
Thank you. That helps me out.
Yeah, no, I legitimately mean that. I don't think anyone is keeping up with everything. I think it's impossible given just how much shit is out there right now. Like, there was less shit out there at a certain point, and now there's more. And I think it's more the fact to me, man, that you still even care about that. Like, and obviously care passionately about it. A lot of people don't after being in the game as long as you have. And I don't know, man. I think just the fact that you care enough to even be worried about it speaks a lot. It's very cool. A lot of people, so even people who are still actively involved in a music career at the point that you're at, I think some people mentally check out after a while and kind of put it on autopilot. And the fact that you're not, man, I think it's very cool. I think you're doing great. I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that, and it helps with me feeling better because there is a bit of a shame that I don't know. I mean, I used to know so much, and now it's like I don't know a fraction of all this music. And what pisses me off about the change, the technological internet computer change that's changed so much of the music industry, is that music is not known anymore as music. What is it known as, Willy?
Content.
Content, exactly. You said it. Smart man. It's how much content there is. It's not about music, it's content. And I don't want to be a content artist.
Absolutely. And I think
that pisses me off.
Yeah, I 100%. I'm with you very much on that. And I think it's important to, if you and I feel that way, it's important to stand against it, because there's a narrative for young artists that's like, you have to just pump content out. Content is everything, etc. But then there are counterexamples of artists who don't do that in the modern era, who do get rewarded for it. Like, it is still possible to be mysterious. It is still possible to have scarcity in your work, and these can be valuable qualities. And somebody like a Childish Gambino or something like that, where doesn't post on social media, drops an album once every 5-8 years, and people lose their minds, and that's in 2025. So it's I don't know, man. I think it's important to talk about that. I don't think there's only one right approach. And any time that we're told that this is the approach you have to take, that's when I start questioning it,
You have to, when you're force-fed.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's also like a problem with authority thing, but that is my natural reaction is to,
punk rock.
Yeah, it's just be like, don't tell me what to do,
Well, I was listening to Sirius the other day, and it was like 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if I was listening to it or it was an ad, but it was like, come join us at Yacht Rock Station. DJ Z-Trip is doing a mix. So, Z-Trip's an old colleague of mine. We played together at the first Bonnaroo.
He's a buddy of mine as well. I love him.
He's so talented. Did you hear his Yacht Rock mix?
Yeah, I did hear that. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, insane.
There's two things that blew me away recently Z-Trip's a friend, a colleague, but Amir Questlove. He's a Philly guy, and I've known them since they were playing on the streets in Philly. And Questlove did a Saturday Night Live 50-year anniversary music mashup video that they play. I don't know if you've ever seen this.
No, I only heard about this. I still haven't seen it.
You have to see the music documentary of 50 years of... It's a music documentary side of it. There's two. There's the SNL like special, and then there's the music version. And what he did, I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's just unbelievable, his creativity. And then what Z-Trip did for this Yacht Rock mix. My wife and I were listening. I was like, we went out to dinner with my father last night. To my wife, I was like, we got to stay in the car after we drop off my father, and I got to play this for you. And he does this mix. I mean, it's an hour long. I mean, how you take an hour of Yacht Rock music and create what he did was just insane. Creating things that you don't realize, and some things that you do realize, and some things you take for granted. Like, he must have taken stems. I haven't talked to him yet to see what he did, but it was so inspiring. But what he did, he took Hotel California by the Eagles, and he put Daryl Hall and John Oates' Man Eater over it. Dude, it's just insane.
He's a beast. He's such a beast.
One of the reasons why I'm mentioning this is because I was talking about feeling weird about not knowing everything that's out there musically. And my wife was in the car as we felt like teenagers. I was hoping that we were going to neck, which for you young kids out there, necking is a term meaning kissing in the car. People used to do it at drive-in movie theaters.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those? No, you don't. There aren't any. Anyways, there was he mixes in the Allman Brothers in the mix. And my wife says, I didn't think that this was yacht rock. So we went into conversation. And did you see the documentary of yacht rock on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's really good. It talks about the 7 degrees of separation. Like it's only yacht rock if these 7 musicians played on it.
Okay.
Like the Donald Fagen and Toto band guys and everything. But it made me I took pride, and I was like, all right, we're talking about music and I know about it. And then when I was listening to your podcast this morning, I was like, oh shit, there's so much stuff that I don't know. And I just kind of went, I'm losing my touch. But I don't want to get back into it. I appreciate the fact you said I'm doing a good job and how much passion I have. But it's just this deep gut feeling is like, I even though it's changed so much, the scene, I still have these, I vacillate in between feeling good and feeling bad about the way things are going.
Right.
Like the corporate aspect of corporate music and corporate clubbing kind of gets me to a point where I question what I do.
Me too. I know.
I'm like, why am I not playing there? I mean, I should be playing at this club. And then I'm like, I see who's playing there, or I see what kind of music there's playing, or I see it's all about something else. And I'm just like, well, I'm actually secretly happy I'm not playing there.
Right.
Yeah. But that's a different version of a Josh Wink from 30 years ago when I was still wet behind the ears and growing and learning. But I still imagine myself growing and learning. And we'll see how much it changed. I mean, AI scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, as it should.
More content is being created and uploaded to our DSPs because of AI. It's taking jobs away from other talented musicians.
Yep.
Do you watch any Star Wars stuff?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do you watch Andor?
It's incredible. Yeah.
You've seen the new season?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're only on the second. My son, I'm like really pissed off because my son is 13 and this, his autonomy really kicked in strong like a year or two ago. And he's separating himself from me in a lot of different ways, but he's still a great, loving kid. And he grew up, I was like, when I have a kid, he's going to grow up watching Star Wars. And he became a Star Wars kid. Now he's like, not into it. He's more into Invincible and stuff on Japanese anime that shows crazy stuff. But anyways, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because he doesn't want to watch Andor with his mom or me.
Right.
And it kind of pissed me off, but I had to deal with that and I'm coming to terms with that. So we watched the first 3 episodes, my wife and I alone. Actually, the first one we watched with our son, and then he's like, I love you guys, but I'm going to go downstairs and watch anime.
Right.
And okay, so we'll watch it on our own. So we're watching it. And the last episode we saw was the wedding.
Oh, yeah.
And they played this song at the wedding song, which was really amazing. It's by this composer who composes, like he did the Succession theme. He's a classical composer that just does a little bit of everything. I didn't know about the guy. I know his music. And then I see on his streams that he has like 2.9 million monthly listeners. I'm like, oh shit. But this scene that he created this song for was really amazing. And it felt like a futuristic Star Wars, like it should be in that. It wasn't like a track that they just licensed that was hot and hip. I'm bringing this up because why? I don't know. Second time I lost my train of thought.
That's totally fine.
It was a great song in the movie, and it really worked, and it wasn't cheesy. Maybe I'm thinking about the change and how music has to be represented in certain ways.
Right.
And it was like a pretty cool track. I implore you to check it out.
And Andor is like one of the best shows in the last 10, maybe 20 years to me. Like it's such an incredible allegory for what's going on politically right now. And like, I couldn't recommend it higher. I would love to come back and do this again sometime, man. This was so fun. We
could do number 2. I dig it. And it gives me more time to be productive and exercise to more of your podcasting, be educated about the youngsters, the hipsters that are coming out and making it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, hey, man, I'm flattered you listened at all. I did want to say, because now that I sort of know your crew a little better, we had Carl Craig on there. We did a Kevin Saunderson episode, just to recommend it. If you are actually listening to more, the Kevin Saunderson one was good. Carl Craig was amazing. There's some, people from the...
you mentioned Tiga earlier as well.
Oh yeah, too. Tiga's on there. Tiga's great. Yeah. But
his podcast was fun too when it was still happening as well.
Right.
But you got some good people. I mean, Carl's awesome. Kevin's awesome. Yeah. They're friends and colleagues and talented people. Along with Tiga and probably other people that you have on there. And
now you, my friend. And now you.
Another notch on your belt, right?
No, not at all, man. This was such a treat, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Well, I'm taking my holiday vacation, working vacation in Ibiza with the wife without my kid because I'm not cool enough to have my kid come to Ibiza with me anymore.
Hey man, what's more lame than your famous DJ dad going to Ibiza?
I thought I was cool, man. Well, I try to be open-minded about his music, and he's turning me on to some stuff too, which is really kind of cool.
That's awesome, man. That's the cycle of it. That's how it should be.
Which is neat. And as long as I'm open-minded to it and not being like a lot of what my parents used to say about my music. Right. You call this music? So I don't, when my son was into video game music, I kind of felt that way, but I was very aware of how I would talk to him about the music that he found interesting. Now I just say it's not my thing, because we listen to a lot of hip hop and a lot of it's misogynistic and violent and this and that. And I'm like, well, I grew up and hip hoppers were talking about social context and not just ketamine and all the stuff that people are talking about nowadays. But it's changed, and intelligence is the ability to adapt to change.
Hey, amen, man.
I got to be intelligent.
I think that's the perfect note to wrap it up on. I think that's kind of the theme of this whole conversation.
Well, thank you for taking the time and the energy into looking into. I mean, I know that you knew a little bit about me before, but the fact that you went deeper and to be prepared, and you asked a lot of great questions, even though I imagine you have more great things to talk about, but I ended up just talking too much.
No, this was perfect. This is the ideal thing. Of course, I have more questions, but like the fact that we didn't get to them just means that we had a great chat. Man, that's the best.
Well, you can tell the publicist that you asked about 6 or 7.
I will. I knew that was a go-to. I had to make sure I got that.
Well, there's some other stuff perhaps in the second one we could talk to, because I have this side project that I did during COVID, which is down-tempo, hip-hop, soul, electronic kind of thing that I'm just sitting on. That a couple of the tracks were written with James Poyser from The Roots. And just, other fun things of the ambient project, this drum and bass stuff that I'm doing, and
you have a lot to do.
So good luck. I wish you a good rest of your summer, and I look forward to delving more into you on your podcast and getting to hear my colleagues be interviewed and the new kids as well.
Hey, thank you so much, man. It means a lot that you're here. Love what you do. You're an inspiration always, and have a great time in Ibiza too.
Thank you, Willie.
All right,
and
man.
Good luck in Baltimore.
Thank you. Well, I'm in DC.
You're DC.
DC,
Okay.
Yeah. Close enough.
Yeah, but you don't say that to each other.
That's right.
I apologize, DC.
All right,
All right,
thank
take
you,
care.
man. Yeah, take care, man.
All right,
Peace
be good.
out. Bye-bye.
Bye.